Rothna Begum, a senior women's rights researcher at Human Rights Watch, specializing in the Middle East and North Africa. And she joins me live now from London. Thank you for being with us on the program today. Now, we are expecting pro-government protests to take place today after Friday prayers in the capital. And the demonstrations have already been violent. And I can't imagine how much more worse it can get if there are rival protesters in the mix.
There's already been a week's worth of protests, and these are general public people. I mean, these are people who have just come out onto the streets all across the country who are absolutely furious and unhappy about the death of Mahsa Amini, who was arrested for improper hijab and then died shortly afterwards. So her death in custody is deemed to be quite suspicious, and people are absolutely furious, not just about the fact that the authorities are imposing rules on women, whether it's to ban the hijab or to enforce the hijab, which has been the history of Iran, but also the terrible restrictions on women in general and the repression on women, the sheer unaccountability of the forces when they abuse and they violate people's rights has led people to take to the streets. We've already seen about 17 people die, according to the government themselves, during these protests. Most of these protests have been largely peaceful. Yes, there seems to be government protesters will be coming out, but let's be clear, when we're talking about those who have been incredibly upset about these, they include people who are pro-regime supporters, people who generally are supportive of the government, who now say that they don't think the morality police should exist or why the authorities are enforcing such discriminatory rules on women.
What do you make of these sanctions that have been imposed by the U.S. on the so-called morality police? Do you think that they might be more counter-effective than effective in solving the problems that women in Iran are facing?
Well, the morality police itself is a real sign of repression in the country. Their sole job is to really go around hounding people for their rights to the peaceful exercise of their own autonomy, their private lives, how they wish to dress or how they choose to dress. None of this really impacts anyone else in any significant way, and yet these people are finding themselves subject to serious violations. The morality police has gone out of its way to actually beat people, to heavily violate their rights in terms of arrest and in terms of detention. So we've seen this practice happening by the morality police itself. They are an incredibly a difficult and a force, and the authorities have actually emboldened them in recent months rather than actually tampering down their powers. And now what we're seeing in Iran is that the society is saying that they're done with the morality police, they're
Right.
done with the institutions in Iran that is actually impacting their rights.
It's ironic, isn't it, how in some parts of the world, like France and India, women have to fight to wear the hijab, and in Iran, they have to fight to take it off. What comes to your mind when you look at the images of women cutting their hair off and burning their scarves in those protests?
Well, both forcing women to wear the hijab and denying women the right to wear the hijab is in itself a form of violence. It's the state denying a woman the right to choose how she wishes to express her religion or how she chooses to express herself. So in all cases, whether you're banning it in France or in India, or in the case of Iran, Iran originally back in the 30s had banned women from wearing the hijab. It became a popular choice among women because they were being banned from wearing the hijab. But then the authorities turned it completely the other way and forced women to wear it. So now we have women who wear chadors and hijab who say that women should not be forced to wear this. It should be their right to choose how they express their religion. And some of these women believe in the right, want to wear the hijab, but they don't want their fellow sisters and their daughters to be forced to wear this or to have the morality police being arresting them because they don't think the scarf is being worn right. Mahsa Amini was wearing a headscarf that day. It just the morality police didn't think with the way she was how she was dressed that day was appropriate. So now we're seeing women, yes, they're cutting off their hair, they're burning their hijab. For them, it's the fact that the authorities are forcing them to do this that is a
Right.
sign of violence, and they're reacting accordingly.